Hey everybody, Tom Barnes stories from the 78. Heading into June in style, we're going down to Pullman for the Pullman Railroad Days event, June 1st and 2nd. I have my friend Joe here to tell me all about it. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing great. Great to be with you.
Great to be with you. Happy weekend to you. It's always awesome when it's 80 degrees on a Friday in Chicago, right? I mean, nothing could go wrong today.
Yeah, it doesn't get better.
No, so that's why we're going to talk about Pullman Days. Just as a 2 day event, celebrates the national park that is in Chicago and the area around that national park that is the town of Pullman and all the great history that's there. And there's so much great history. If people are not familiar with it, tell them why this is such an excellent way to learn about your city in a way that perhaps they don't know.
So really, the stories of Pullman are the stories of America, but even more than that, it's Chicago's DNA. This is truly a quintessential Chicago story. We like to say America's stories live in Pullman, and that's for a couple of reasons. First off, because it remains a living, breathing community today, even though it's all part of a national park now. But more importantly, no matter who you are in this country, you can almost find some kind of link to these stories that run through Pullman, the stories of immigration, the stories of the Great Migration, stories of the Civil Rights Movement, of labor history and human dignity. The incredible stories of how the Pullman Company and George Pullman transformed railroad transportation at a time when railroads were transforming America. That's a
Yeah.
quintessential American story. There was no national economy. There was no national economy before the Transcontinental Railroad. And so railroading changed our nation that much, and Pullman changed rail transportation. And so
Right. And
all
we
these
were Chicago
stories,
right in the center of it all.
Chicago was and remains the rail hub of the nation. And that's actually one of the reasons why George Pullman chose this location for his factory. He actually started operations elsewhere. But as he looked to grow, he found this parcel of land on the south side that was outside of Chicago at that time. And so he established his own community, what is considered the first planned model industrial community, creating all these amenities for the working class that they wouldn't have anywhere else. Indoor plumbing, which was a huge deal, and gorgeous architecture and parks and landscaping. And all this right adjacent to the factory site where all of this industrial innovation was going on.
Yeah, a lot of interesting history about Pullman itself. And from just doing stories around Pullman, I believe Pullman was dry back in the day, like in terms of no alcohol, no bars,
There,
but
there was
around it there were.
one, ironically, but it was inside the Hotel Florence.
Oh,
And, which again is a gorgeous, iconic building. And that was the one and only bar in town, but it wasn't for the workers. The workers were not allowed, to go in there and really wouldn't want to because it was for Pullman's customers. It was for the upper class. And yeah, so Pullman was dry, and that was part of a friction that developed between the workers that lived there in Pullman and their owner, George M. Pullman and the Pullman Company. But they would sneak out, across the tracks over to Roseland and the Kensington neighborhood. That's where
Schlitz
all the
Row.
taverns were.
Yeah, Schlitz Row. I
Yeah.
learned about the carriage houses and all that stuff that were, they would say back then, you'd hear the whistle blow in the factory, and then there would just be this right by the metro tracks there, the steady, caravan of workers that would come looking for something to drink and well deserved drink, right?
And
So,
it was just 2 blocks away, but it was the other side of the tracks.
well, you mentioned the Hotel Florence, and that is one of the spots that people can venture out on Saturday and Sunday in Pullman, which usually it doesn't happen because it's not open to the public.
It's a big deal. You know, we're so thankful that the state of Illinois owns that building, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and this is one of the few times where they're able to open it up for us. It's only the first floor because the building is going under restoration. You know, some pretty big dreams there of what we would like to see happen to complement the national park there. But right now for Pullman Railroad Days, the first floor is opened up, and you know, you really do get a chance to get a flavor for, you know, the glory of that building back in the 1890s. And you know, it really was something in its day.
And they also have a couple other things that you're debuting for this event, a couple Pullman cars that haven't been seen in a while, right?
Yeah. So, you know, because we don't have any historic rail equipment on the factory site yet, now that's underway. We've got some big plans on that that are actually gaining some very real traction. But because there isn't equipment on the factory site today, we bring equipment in for Pullman Railroad Days. And the American Association of Private Railcar Owners is a wonderful partner. Them and Metra, the AAPRCO owners will bring a couple of cars into town. Metra is wonderful enough to provide crews and handle the movements of those cars. And so we park them up at the 111th Street platform, and they're available for touring. Because it's a short platform, we can actually, it's a two-car platform, so we can barely get 3 cars on there to tour. But this year we have 3 cars that have not been on display in Pullman before. And one of them is coming home for its 100th birthday. The 1923 Dover Harbor, you know, is coming home, coming back to Pullman to celebrate its 100th birthday. Just a gorgeous car. Then we also have a 1950s sleeper observation car, the Blue Ridge Club, and 1957 a sleek car, the Hollywood Beach. And so 3 gorgeous cars. It allows, you know, visitors to tour them, to walk through them, and to really get that feel for what it was like to travel by rail on a Pullman back in the day.
Yeah, and not only to see what it was like, but see what Chicago built, right? I mean, Chicago
Right.
built amazing things and still do, but not like it was back then. I mean, these Pullman rail cars were, I mean, the world envied these Pullman rail cars, you know? I mean, they were so popular, you had a whole town devoted to just building these things.
That's right. That's right. And they set the standard. You know, Pullman was not the first to build a
Right.
sleeper car. They existed, but he completely revolutionized the sleeping car accommodations, because before Pullman, sleepers existed, but it was not a comfortable experience. It was something to be endured.
Something you saw
Certainly
like in
not
the
in.
Three Stooges. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I can
yeah,
think of a
yeah.
couple of things where there's like 3 people stacked high on the sides. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But Pullman
sorry.
changed all that with luxury, with comfort, attention to detail. And of course, this is where the story of the Pullman porters come in, you know, in providing so much of that luxurious experience. And, you know, that is a whole story on its own, and what the porters meant in, you know, their achievements as the first African-American labor union, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, to be chartered by the AFL-CIO. And of course, everything that they did to lay the foundation for the civil rights movement. So that's a whole story in itself.
Right. You have a lot of American labor movements that happened in Pullman. Some, and they are to what the standards are today for unions and whatnot. And so there's a lot to be able to educate yourself if you're not sure on these walking tours and for these railroad days. And that's the other thing. This is a walking tour. So there are things outside and inside. And there is some rain in the forecast on Saturday, but you guys are doing this rain or shine, and you even have some ponchos for people if they don't bring
Yeah,
their own. But yeah, right? Like this is happening no matter what.
absolutely. It's a rain or shine event. And, you know, it looks like the forecast for the most part will just be periods of some misting. And so, yeah, we've got the ponchos that'll be available for sale at our store. But it's rain or shine. Certainly there is indoor events. The National Park Service Visitor Center is indoors, and it's fabulous. Our exhibit hall is open, and that has a new exhibit celebrating the 130th anniversary of the 1894 Pullman Strike. And so that's indoors. That's a great exhibit. The rail cars indoors, and the lines queuing up to tour those rail cars would be under the viaduct. But the walking tours are outdoors, and they're great. We have a labor history walking tour. We have a neighborhood walking tour, which is great. You know, it explains the community's place in urban planning and architecture, and how that really changed urban planning, how it had informed the Burnham plan. You know, before Burnham developed the whole plan for Chicago, Pullman helped shape his vision on that. Visitors, you know, for the World's Fair in 1892, 1893, came and visited Pullman. His, you know, it was called Pullman's perfect community, perfect town.
Yeah.
They came from around the globe. And so the walking tour of the community helps explain that. A tour of the factory site to help you understand the industrial innovation of Pullman. Henry Ford came to Pullman to see the transfer table as Ford was contemplating his vision for what an assembly line might look like.
I did not know that. That's a fun fact.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so you could almost argue that Pullman's transfer table was the first assembly line. You know, but yeah, it informed Henry Ford. And so, you know, Pullman pushed innovation in all these different ways. And so the walking tours are a great way to learn more of these American stories that live right there in Pullman.
And I think that's something we don't lately do enough of, is celebrate the American achievements as one country and what we can do when we really are in, you know, like the World's Fair you mentioned. People didn't think Chicago could pull it off. They didn't, you know, and Burnham said, yeah, we can, and we're going to show you. And we did. And we, you know, and we showed the world that we can do it, what we can do not only in Chicago, but in the United States. And just given the climate of the world, I feel like we could use a little bit more of like, hey, remember why we love this country so much and what we can do?
Can do spirit.
Absolutely. So that's a great way to look at it and celebrate, regardless of the rain or not. You walk through the raindrops, you'll find all these amazing opportunities and these cars that you talk about that are now, I mean, they're beautiful, like museums into themselves, right? So for people looking to come out, you know, what do you recommend for driving and parking? If they're driving, or taking the train is probably the best way to do it, I'm guessing.
So it is. You know, obviously, you know, if you're driving, and there is some construction on I-94, so depending on which direction you're coming from, you can still exit at 111th Street, which would be kind of the main street in Pullman. The Pullman community, and actually the boundaries of the Pullman National Park, actually run from 103rd Street all the way down to 115th Street. And so the National Park does in fact include the entire neighborhood.
Oh, I didn't know that.
As the factory site. Yeah, because the neighborhood's that significant.
Right. I know that they have certain things where when they're renovating, they have to renovate the porches to the way that they are supposed to be. I did a whole story about the Pullman Tech Workshop not too long ago, where they are, that's what they're doing. So that's incredible to keep that look.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously I-94, Bishop Ford, again, depending on whether you're coming from north or south, you can get off at either 111th Street and come in, and there's plenty of parking available. Or if you're coming from the other direction, 115th Street, and can come in. But truly, the best way to come is by Metra Electric, the old Illinois Central, which I was a commuter train conductor on as a young man.
Were you really?
Yeah, that's how I fell in love with Pullman. But if you come by Metra, and arrive there at that 111th Street platform, you actually will arrive the way that Pullman's guests arrived 130 years ago. And that community was designed for this big presentation from that train platform. When you arrive there at 111th Street, you see the Hotel Florence in front of you, and the parks, and the Greenstone Church, and the community, as well as the factory site. And it was designed to have that impact. And so coming by train allows you to have that same presentation. So not only do you get to leave the driving to Metra, but you get that full experience. And for me, I always say that's how I fell in love with Pullman as an 18-year-old conductor. When I started working those commuter trains, passing through that town, it captivated me. It's like, what is this? This beauty, this incredible community. And so it's a great way to travel.
Yeah, it truly is, a beautiful. I heard a story a long time ago, and if you heard this, I apologize, but Zucker, the director, I can't think of his first name. His last name is Zucker. He directed Back to the Future and a ton of movies. He is from Roseland, and growing up in the 50s and 60s, he directed the movie Polar Express.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is based on Pullman.
Yep.
Yeah, Christmas time we do a display, and actually we have to start doing more on that because it's a great story, right? If you watch that film, the design is based on the architecture in Pullman. Yeah.
That he told that story one time. I was like, oh, I didn't know. First, I didn't know he was from Roseland, and then he talked about Roseland growing up in Chicago and going to Pullman at Christmas time, and he just thought it was the most magical place on the planet. So the fact that there is the Historic Pullman Foundation doing these railroad days to keep that alive and to preserve it for the future and to grow it, right? Because I know that Pullman, a lot of those buildings, 20 years ago, now some of the buildings that maybe weren't even occupied are lived in now. People are renovating the buildings, bringing them back, bringing that neighborhood, filling it back in, I should say, because it was always there, but filling it back in.
Yeah, it's an incredible community. We still have a lot of work to do on the factory site, but every day we continue to make progress there. Obviously the visitor center for the National Park Service is in the old administration building, the clock tower building. And, 30 some years ago, that was decimated by a fire. And today, it's a gorgeous building again, where visitors can learn about all these stories of Pullman. The clock tower is restored and functions again, remains a visual icon in the community. As I said, we're working on a project now to rebuild a spur that came out 60 years ago or so that would allow to return and display more permanently historic rail cars on the factory site. And so we'll be putting back into place what was there 130 years ago, but was lost 50, 60 years ago.
Love it. And I appreciate you taking time to chat with me about this event. Again, the first and second, what are the hours, and is there a cost for this? That's something we didn't mention yet.
Yeah. So tickets are required in order to tour the rail cars or take any of the walking tours or to access the Hotel Florence. Obviously, the visitor center for the National Park Service is open and is free. So there are free things that you can do, including enjoy the music and the food. But to really, see the cars, take the tours, there's a cost. Tickets have been available on Eventbrite and will be until 7:00 p.m. Today, Friday, the 31st. And you get a slight discount if you buy them online at Eventbrite. Otherwise, they are available at our ticket booth at the door. And shame on me, I don't remember the price as it changes
Well,
around.
that's okay.
Yeah, I believe it's $36 at the door, if memory serves me right. And kids 12 and under are free with a paid adult. So we try to make sure that it's family friendly.
Yeah, and it's just a great event to talk about area of the city, that maybe sometimes has gotten overlooked in the present here, but so much history, so much that we owe to that neighborhood, to why Chicago is the way it is, and why the world is the way it is. So, a great fun event that is over the course of a weekend where the weather eventually will be beautiful no matter what. So, Sunday's looking great. So, but Saturday, you know what, you might get to see some stuff that you normally wouldn't get to see.
Right.
So either way, head out there. So Joe, thank you so much. I appreciate talking to you today.
Thank you, Tom.